We now return to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Chief Inspector Satoru Hosunaga, Imperial Police Bureau. I'm in disguise, obviously, so I can go undetected. And I am, well, the next big thing in books. An author renowned throughout the capital, in fact, yes. Soon to be sold out, the satirical I Am a Cat, a sensational success by Soseki Natsume. Oh my goodness. Struggling student from the provinces, please. You needn't be in awe of me. I needn't? It's only natural that you'd feel nervous in my presence, but all of you, please relax. Call me Soseki, even. Yes. What on earth is Soseki-san doing here? Tread carefully, Sasato. That author fellow knows you from your time in London, doesn't he? If he exposes you for who you really are, this will be over before it's begun. Yes, of course, I know. I presume Soseki-san won't have forgotten about me. I could certainly never forget him. Although he does seem to have changed somewhat in the 6 months or so that it's been since I last saw him. And as for Inspector Hosunaga, that amazing outfit is hard to believe. Do I have something on my face? Well, your glasses for one, although they don't seem to be helping you see. Thank goodness he hasn't recognized me either. I suppose it's this disguise, is it? I thought that appearing here in the clothes I was wearing at the time would make for a more faithful testimony. It is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly. Well, I can appreciate why an Imperial Police Bureau detective might have been present. What business did a writer such as yourself have being at the scene, Soseki-san? Ah, well, you see, I had been asked that day to give a lecture, on the morning of the incident, in the Imperial Yume University's Grand Lecture Hall, no less. At Yume University? After the lecture, I had a very pleasant conversation with a researcher from the Medical Science Department. The professor over there, in fact. With Professor Mikotoba? Yes, that's right. It was arranged by one of the newspapers. They wanted some story or other about 2 former students who'd studied in Great Britain. Of course, being a renowned author, the press never leave me alone. They secretly spy, snapshots, scribble stories, and scupper my privacy. As you can see, the conversation was written up in this newspaper here. Read it at your leisure, my provincial struggling student friend. I have plenty of copies. Thank you very much. Practically threw the paper at me. The Soseki Natsume article has been entered into the court record. I suppose we should look at that as soon as possible. Anyway, following my interview of the professor... Hold on a sec. Is that supposed to be... I wish I could read that. It's the cat. Wani. Okay, well, I guess we can't find anything. I mean, nothing special stands out anyhow. I guess we could examine this while we're here. Ascertain my... Okay. Single deep stab wound from behind, piercing the lung and resulting in a fatal hemorrhage. Death would have occurred within minutes. Extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim in both eyes. Okay, I'm sure that's going to be a helpful hint there. Anyway, following my interview with the professor, the lady in question appeared and made a very unexpected announcement.
I should like to go with everyone to see your country's coasts. Those were her words.
As I explained before, Miss Brett was never taken into custody. She continued to work in my laboratory under strict surveillance, of course. At which utterance, the university immediately contacted the government to seek guidance. And the response was, permit Miss Brett to go as long as a detective accompanies her. That detective, I am at liberty to divulge, was me, Chief Inspector Satoru Hosunaga. Thereby the entire party departed cordially for the seaside, it seems. It was extremely challenging to clear all other members of the public from the vicinity of the beach. But fortunately, I am at peak physical fitness at the moment, so are you still bleeding from the mouth? I was able to carry out my duty flawlessly. Oh my, Inspector, you do have something on your face now. How unsightly. I do apologize. Does that mean that you went to the beach too, Father? No. Unfortunately, I had work to finish off. But unfortunately, of course, it meant that as my assistant, Ray was invited to take my place.
Of course, being a renowned author, I didn't like to decline the invitation. But only if I had. I'd never have seen that awful sight. Relentlessly racked by remorse and regret.
I guess that's supposed to be ink smudge on his hand from writing, even though he's using a pencil back there? Very well. I must now ask you to present your formal testimony to the court. You will give an account of all that you witnessed on your impromptu excursion to the coast. Of course, Your Excellency.
Relentlessly racked by remorse and regret, I am.
The witnessed scene. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise.
I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a caterwaul from behind me.
I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question.
Yes, that young girl was astride the Englishwoman, dagger in hand, as she stabbed wildly.
Uh-huh. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd stabbed the victim multiple times. Well, you're both wrong. Indeed, it does appear from this testimony that both witnesses here present saw it. The very moment of this heinous crime.
What? Now, if you will recall, I promised evidence as well. What phrase did I use again? Ah, yes, that was it. Damning evidence.
What have you there, Counsel? A so-called fountain pen, is it?
Correct, Your Excellency. I found it at the scene whilst examining the body. It appears that in her dying moments, with her final ounce of strength, the victim clutched a piece of evidence that would positively identify her killer.
What?
Your Excellency, if you would cast your eyes over the photographic print of the crime scene once more.
Ah, goodness me. Yes, the victim is clearly grasping something quite deliberately there in her hand.
That's right, the fountain pen. And if you would kindly examine the pen, Your Excellency.
Ah, the owner's initials have been engraved into the ebonite barrel. R.M. Ray Membami, the initials of the defendant. Didn't we have an issue with this before? In the previous game? Where the initials were not the correct person. This fountain pen will be admitted immediately as critical evidence. Fountain pen has been entered into the court record. We will look at that immediately.
So, have I omitted anything? Well, I mean, yes. But, oh, we can't examine. We can't examine it. Alright. Very well. Decisive testimony and damning evidence. There's a bright blue sky outside the courthouse today. Perfect weather to ascribe guilt, I feel. I don't understand. The prosecutor Aochi of 9 months ago had none of this man's poise.
Counsel for the defense, you may begin your cross-examination now. Naruhodo-san.
Naruhodo. That means... Oh, yes, me!
Is there another Naruhodo in my courtroom?
Actually, there isn't even a single Naruhodo in your courtroom. Cousin Ryutaro, please pull yourself together. All right, I've seen this countless times as a judicial assistant. Find inconsistencies in the witness's testimony to prove that they're lying somehow. That's all there is to it. That's how a real lawyer would handle a cross-examination. So let's see what I can do. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance.
Hold it!
In that jaunty disguise? Correct. Wait, no. I mean, it wasn't the first time I've worn this swimsuit for a dip in the ocean. It's tried and tested. Do what must be done to keep the Englishwoman under surveillance. Those were my orders that day. And this tried and tested outfit was the answer. Being able to blend flawlessly into a crowd is an important part of a detective's job. I submerged myself in the salty water, leaving only Mr. Turtle floating inconspicuously on the surface. Mr. Turtle loves the water. But there was no need for you to blend into the background on this assignment, really, was there? If that made you late arriving on the scene, I think perhaps you had your priorities wrong. Perhaps I shouldn't pursue this line of questioning any further at the moment.
I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a caterwaul from behind me.
Hold it!
Ah, you're describing the victim's scream, presumably, Soseki-san?
In more literary terms, you might say it was a scream that could have pierced the heavens. Kya, or the like. Of course, that's just a metaphor. We renowned authors are wont to describing things so.
Soseki-san wasn't at all like this in England.
Anyway, I spun around at the noise and the beach hut immediately fell under my gaze.
Yes, the beach hut. The area is popular with government ministers. Many have seaside retreats there for rest and recuperation. The locals are prohibited from entering the area, so it's always very quiet. The beach hut is a simple structure erected as a place for people to change or take refuge from the sun.
Although the Englishwoman commandeered the hut for herself, which meant that I was forced to change into my swimwear on the sand.
Ah, I imagine that was rather embarrassing for you.
Well, anyway, I tossed the crab aside and headed for the beach hut at a run. Or, in more literary terms, I decrabbed and beetled off hutwise. Okay, I'm sure there's a translation that this was actually a funny pun in Japanese, but not so much. I don't even know what the hell this is.
I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question.
Hold it!
Wait, by pair, you don't mean to say... but how could that be? No, you misunderstand. Obviously, I mean the victim and the defendant, Rei Membami-san. Oh, it would have been helpful if you could have just said that from the outset. I'm not sure... Once again, why is there confusion here? This makes perfect sense in English. If you jump to conclusions, you have to expect to fall flat on your face sometimes. Dear me, pinning your hopes on such an outside chance. Foolish, very foolish, unless the implication was that because of the order of the testimony here, he was talking possibly about Soseki-san. It really was an outside chance. I just wish I'd realized that before I said something silly. And so, Inspector, why don't you tell the court how exactly you found the aforementioned pair in the hut? Well, it was a sorry sight, a really grisly scene. I parted the Norin curtain hanging in the doorway and stepped inside, only to see the defendant leaning menacingly over the lifeless body of the victim sprawled on the sand. This guy's got consumption or something. My glasses very nearly cracked at the ominous sight that met my eyes. How thoroughly appalling. He doesn't appear to be lying here. Well, Soseki-san, can you confirm what Inspector Hosunaga is saying, I wonder?
You'd like a literary man's opinion? Yes, the young girl was astride the Englishwoman.
Hold it!
Stabbed wildly. You actually saw her do it.
Oh, indeed. The terrible spectre, the terrapin inspector, the bloody torrent, the author's torment. Every sight and every sound is still carved in my melancholy memory. That was my impression, at least, as a future literary sensation.
Counsel, what on earth was that shrill, effeminate scream? Oh, no. What are you insinuating? I'm as manly a Japanese man as you. I wonder if I might interject here, Soseki-san. Something you said is troubling me. That was my impression, were your words just now, I believe. So do you mean to say you're not confident that you really did see what you've just described?
No, yes. I know what I saw. My ears didn't deceive me when I heard that scream, hence my eyes didn't deceive me either. I could describe everything I saw vividly. I could publish it all in tomorrow's newspaper serial.
Yeah. It sounds as though the next installment of I Am a Cat may take a macabre turn. I think this is a fool's errand. The more we press your author friend on what he saw, the more entrenched he's going to become. Dear, how awkward. I like how the game is giving me a hint very early on, because this is technically the tutorial of the second game, and telling me, hey, this is not what you should be going after. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd been stabbed multiple times. We already know this is false, so we're just going to go ahead and present this without pressing further.
Objection!
With that accusatory cry that just welled up from deep inside me, I think I finally understand. Every time Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san have stood here at this bench, the stakes have been very, very high indeed. What's the meaning of that menacing pose, Counsel? I'd like the witness to clarify something for me.
Who? What? Where? When? How?
Not you, Soseki-san. This query is directed at Inspector Hosunaga. At me? In your statement just now, you said that the victim was stabbed multiple times. Yes, that's right. As I said when I entered the hut, the defendant was already standing over the victim, bloody knife in hand, like a murderous demon. And yet, that cannot be. What? Get to the point, please, Counsel. In the post-mortem report, it clearly states that the victim was stabbed one time only. In other words, Inspector Hosunaga's testimony is clearly flawed. And Soseki-san,
Me?
You claim to have seen Menbami-san in the throes of stabbing the victim.
Yes, I did. Wildly.
But both you and the inspector confirmed the same point, that there was already blood on the knife that you saw the defendant holding. Yes, and it's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once. Therefore, there is no way there could have been blood on the knife if that single stabbing hadn't already occurred.
True.
And what exactly is your contention, counsel? Are you ever going to tell us?
Yeah, this guy is far less patient than the one in Britain. Yes, Your Excellency, there's only one logical conclusion. What Saseki-san in fact saw was not the moment that the defendant stabbed the victim at all, but the moment that the defendant in fact withdrew the blade from the victim's body.
That can't be.
Excellent work, Susato. You exploded at them with the objection and then proceeded to pull them apart systematically.
Objection!
Well, this takes me back. Yes, I seem to remember your cousin staged a scene much like this in that trial 9 months ago. A half-witted child with a half-baked objection attempting to steal the show.
You're right. There were certain similarities. Except that so-called half-witted child managed to outwit the prosecution, who has only half a head of hair.
Slander! My head is quite adequately dressed. In any case, all this talk of stabbing and withdrawing and multiple wounds, it makes not a jot of difference. What? Why not? Engage your brain, young man. When the accused first plunged the deadly weapon into the victim, that was the fatal blow. And it was that moment, just as she had withdrawn the blade ready for her next strike, that the witnesses saw. The knife was already tainted with blood because the accused had already stabbed the victim. All you have successfully shown with your little display is that the mustached author is prone to moments of extravagance. But Hosunaga also mentioned that she, in her last moments, was doing something when the report also says she died instantly.
I am in agreement with the prosecution. If the defendant was seen wielding the blade at all, that is sufficient grounds for her actions to be viewed with suspicion.
But if she was withdrawing the blade, then we are back where we started. Sorry? Consider this, young yokel boy. If the student girl is innocent, as you claim, then why would she have pulled the blade from the victim, and with a demon's cold-blooded composure, too? The prosecution demands an explanation, and it had better be good. Why did Ray pull out the knife?
Yes, going for the jugular.
It was the back, actually. Huh? What does Father mean by that?
Let the court hear your answer, counsel.
The truth is, I don't really know, but I have come up with a plausible reason here, or I have to come up with a plausible reason here. We don't have a case. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife blade out of the victim's body was surely so she could... I mean, it has to be that, right? According to the post-mortem report, the victim's death was not instant. Okay, well, within minutes, okay. That's correct. It's thought she would have remained conscious for a short while after sustaining the injury. Indeed, giving her the time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates her killer. The point is, being a medical research assistant, Menbami-san was compelled to act when faced with the wounded victim. Instinctively, she pulled the blade out in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life. Did you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we can expect of this young yokel.
Indeed.
Is it just me, or does it suddenly feel much colder in here?
So who is JM? We're gonna get a surprise witness or something. Your Excellency, if I may. Speak, witness.
I would like another opportunity to testify in respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the Yokel Defense Council, I mean. Slipshod? An excellent idea, Inspector. Our young yokel hopeful has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to the law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not one iota of common sense.
Very well, Inspector. I will permit your request. You will testify again before the court on the subject of the Defense Counsel's assertion.
Yes, sir, I will do so flawlessly. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. And let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes, think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed. Oh, I see. Ha! This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled the blade out of a wound, so...
Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit.
Father, is it true what they're telling me?
Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge for medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance of such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways.
But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out that knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal for Miss Brett?
I don't know.
Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but... could my friend actually have...
Susato.
Yes?
Pull yourself together, good.
This is literally a mirror of the previous game. They are just... They took the same plot and dialogue and just replaced the characters. This is going to be another lecture on
believing in your client and the defense and blah, 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 blah. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here. Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination.
Oh, yes, Your Excellency. However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards. I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I had no idea it would be this hard. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean that if you use due care and attention, it would be alright? I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out, really, but the blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it, and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it. Oh, well, thank you for such a thorough explanation. You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath.
Back to the witness testimony, please.
That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant would know.
Hold it!
In that case, there's an obvious explanation here. Which is? Clearly, the defendant, Rei Minbami-san, does not possess an ounce of sense. What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba?
I'm not sure that you should be labeling your best friend as lacking in common sense.
Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her as a murderer. I don't know, young people today. If that's friendship, I don't understand it. I don't know, young people today. Whatever, wrong inflections.
Careful, counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing.
Oh dear, that's recoiled on me rather badly.
As life, I'm afraid. A lesson everyone must learn.
Hopefully you can see now that this is really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Minbami-san would certainly have been aware of it. In other words, there's no good reason why she'd pull a knife from the victim. But the defendant had suddenly encountered somebody she knew lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently. I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. But irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such bigoted views. Oh dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? That should cover the medical side of the argument. Let's not forget the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. Whatever the motive, it just isn't in Minbami-san's nature to do something so awful. But she had both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant. And you, counsel, do not appear to know the law. Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument. Not feelings. Whatever. With this fledgling to defend her, I would almost say I pity the accused. So do I.
Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the defendant's motive, please?
Ah, yes. Miss Brett was in many ways the sworn enemy of Minbami-san. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Minbami-san's talent and offered her the position of assistant despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual.
Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Minbami-san's ability.
Clearly, the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. This is hopeless. I can't find a single crack in this testimony anywhere. If Ray knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further, I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it.
Susato, it's at times like these when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals, that the game will introduce evidence and/or witnesses as a deus ex machina when you have run into a wall.
The fundamentals?
Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it?
Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times already.
I think perhaps you're forgetting something, though. You needn't take the evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail, too. I realize this is your first time playing the role of lawyer in the courtroom, so if you need reminding of the rudiments, you only need ask. I'll do my very best to help.
Examine the evidence in the court record? It's an idea, certainly. What should I do?
Walk me through it, Sensei.
Yes, Father. Spartan guidance is what I need.
I think that might be overdoing it slightly, but... Very well. So, open the court record first of all with E. Yeah. Now let's take a look at the fountain pen, which was not available earlier, you motherfuckers. Press space to examine it.
Yes, the initials are M. There they are, clearly engraved on the barrel.
By using the rotational, or you can look at pieces of evidence from all angles. You should have a good look at everything to make sure you haven't missed any clues.
Yes, I will. I just need to rotate the pen and watch closely for anything out of the ordinary then. Or more specifically, for the thing to change. There's some sort of emblem here, look. But it isn't a Yume University one.
It must belong to some other organization, I suppose. A business of some kind. But that would seem to imply that the pen doesn't in fact belong to Ray.
The details of the fountain pen have been updated in the court record. And that's all we need. Pulling away from the wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. Basic knowledge of medical research. In other words, there's no reason. Let's not forget, did have a motive for killing. Man murdered months ago. So, where do I fucking present this? Jesus Christ, do we really have to go through? Oh, fuck me! Yeah. I can't believe the game is making me do this again.
Hold it! Objection!
Like, where the fuck do I present this? I'm just gonna fucking present it at every turn then, because I don't see where this would change. I don't care, skip it. Fuck, come on.
Objection!
It's not that one either. Where the fuck do I present this? There's no fucking argument or dialogue option where I can refute this immediately. Shit pisses me off sometimes with how fucking obtuse it is.
Objection! Objection!
I guess we just start from the fucking beginning then and go through all the goddamn dialogue again. This is fucking idiotic.
Hold it! Hold it!
want to know how the fuck I get back to the dialogue where he's talking about how she's holding the pen in her hand. Where the fuck is that at?
Hold it! Objection! Hold it!
What the fucking Christ do I do with this? You can fuck off with that. Alright, the correct answer is not even part of the goddamn pen. This is the newspaper from Saseki-san. There seems to be important articles on the back page as well. Exclusive, deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Lab. From Yume's Medical Research... Father, isn't that your lab?
What the? Let me see that. The poison been stolen?
Is this morning's paper that Saseki-san gave us? Are you saying that you didn't know?
And embarrassing as that is, or the head of the laboratory, I didn't. I've heard no such thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned this information?
Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning the story in our paper this morning, was there?
It's a highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I put Ray in charge of the project.
Ray? She's managing it?
If that's what's written here is true, it means she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow.
I don't believe it.
We need to read this article very carefully.
The article's been... okay, can we actually read the article this time? Rockets England returnees tells all. This is the interview with you and Saseki-san, isn't it, Father? Has nothing to do with anything. Looks as though it was quite an exchange.
Yes, he came a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand karate chopped me in the neck.
I do hope you weren't hurt. The fuck is this shit? Exclusive. Medical poison stolen. Following a lecture on the 11th of August, came to light a very disturbing incident. Deadly poison secretly developed in the lab was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade could have had fatal... The university has been consulted. Onset symptoms started with impaired breathing. I mean, I can only imagine a knife to the lung would impair your breathing as much as poison. With acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. Such symptoms would be suggestive of its toxin. Apparently... okay, whatever. That's what we need right there.
Objection!
Now there is one possibility, one very good reason, why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What? Ha, the yokel not only has poor grasp of the law, but also is a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified? It's here, in this newspaper article. An article about a deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at the Imperial Yume University. The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance in this case. But...
Prosecutor Aochi, you will let the defense speak.
Thank God. But a newspaper article, the court cannot rely on the kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry.
Counsel for the defense. I'm going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion.
Your Excellency, yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article, where it says... The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death within minutes. Are you suggesting... If the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Membami-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is... It was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. I mean, the knife through the lung probably would have done the job anyway. Just saying. This is complete and utter nonsense. Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life. And the prosecution cannot deny the possibility. Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the document. Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking... Jesus Christ. Oh, please, this is clearly desperation. The weasel's last breaking of wind. What? What kind of fucking saying is that? Poison was nothing whatsoever to do with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in this wretched newspaper article is at all reliable anyway. In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive, but instead, you claim she suspected poisoning and took the potential lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense. Exactly. Well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it? Yokel? Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds. What? You can't possibly...
From your expression, Counsel, it would appear those are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. The court demands evidence. Yes, Your Excellency. I'm aware of that. I've seen it many times, from my place at his side in the Old Bailey. In that case, Counsel, will you present the proof to the court now? What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article? I believe it is this. I'm going to examine this before I present this. Contraction of the pupils, yes.
Take that!
I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim. Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death? Well, under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes. What are you doing, you yokel detective? In the newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occur in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. Oh, nani? If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely, yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt. Prosecutor Auchi. I think you'll agree, this is very compelling evidence. You yokel student and yokel professor. I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions. No. Eugene Mikotoba. Yes, Your Excellency.
I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please. It pains me to have to admit it, but I am afraid I don't know. You don't know. The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft. Do you mean to tell the court that the reports of this theft are unfounded? No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say.
Ha, listen to the bumbling academic. Unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in the newspaper.
I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision.
My father. A pitiable situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students rather than allowing them off on killing sprees. That's totally unfounded. Here we go. None of this is Professor Mikoto's... Whatever. It's all my fault. Ray.
Mbami-san, you stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated.
But it was me. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen that day.
What?
So you knew. I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Saseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount it was.
Why didn't you let me know immediately?
I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So I decided I'd try to get it back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was. Thief? You don't mean... Yes, of course. It was that dainty Englishwoman.
Miss Giselle Brett.
That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett. And she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. The pupils of her eyes they'd shrunk to tiny pinpoints.
I don't believe it.
In other words, you realized that the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison. My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything past Miss Brett's lips whilst I'd been with her, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body. On the blade of the knife in her back.
And that train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade.
Yes, if the amount that had entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance.
There's like a 9-inch blade going through her fucking lung.
That's what I hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time. Given that the Japanese court system does not appear to allow the accused to be their own witnesses, this is not really surprising.
Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you confessed in the end.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here in this courtroom now. Your Excellency, do not be deceived. The victim has just collapsed before your eyes, you say? Well, Membami-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brett came to be stabbed. Well, you have no answer, because the simple truth is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge.
Objection!
But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you? Oh, I have evidence, and it is very much conclusive. What's the prosecution counsel up to? It was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm almost sure of it.
You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Aochi.
Perhaps some praise is due, young yokel student. What? I had imagined there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. There's always... God, I'm already tired of this. I'm already tired of knowing that this is... You go so far and then you hit a wall and then the game's like, but now here's some new evidence. But you've brought this on yourself. What the... Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air on that beach is almost palpable. Okay, but who took the photo? This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature, for it shows the precise moment that Menbami-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back. What's the journalist's name? No, that's not true. No! I don't believe it.
Order! Order! Counsel for the defense. Was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom?
Perhaps this voice has yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature. I'll show you who's slow to mature.
Careful now. Susato is starting to show her face here.
It is often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photographic print as evidence. The incriminating photograph has been entered into the court record. I can't believe he's had a photograph like that up his sleeve the entire time. It's such a stark image. I'm genuinely lost for words. Let's actually look at it. I mean, it just... Who took the photograph? Wait a minute, I don't understand. How did you... I mean, who took that photograph exactly? Hey. That's of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention.
Objection!
That's an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony.
I will uphold the defense's demand. The prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking this photograph at once.
Well, I'm afraid I can't do that.
Pardon?
You see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post yesterday, and there was nothing to indicate the sender's name or address. The provenance of the print is unknown.
Goodness.
Are we to understand then, counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact that this photograph has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believe it fit for submission as evidence in the Supreme Court?
When you first produced that print before, I noticed that you hesitated for a brief moment because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you?
Silence, you yokel student and blabbering professor. What matters is that the blatant truth that this print so eloquently expresses.
But the defendant has already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound.
Clearly this isn't the moment that the knife was plunged into the victim's back, but the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste this court's time with your ramblings.
Indeed, without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim, and the scene it captures is without doubt the most compelling evidence presented to the court. If the defense is unable to shed any further light on the matter, I believe the conclusion is clear.
No.
Susato, this is the time for you to fight. If what you've established so far is true, then there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment that Ray withdrew the blade from the victim.
Yes, we just need to prove that somehow. You'll have plenty of time to rue your defeat on the slow train back to the provinces, and to rue the day you came up against Takatsuchi Aochi in a court of law. If I can't determine who took this photograph, then the trial is going to come to an end. There must be a clue somewhere. There must be some way of working out who took it.
Well, Counsel?
Your Excellency, the burning question is who took that photograph, and the truth is... Well, we have to have the answer, right? And I'm willing to bet it's the damned examiner. Or the examiner. Journalist! Right? Because that thing, there's a little bit of a crack. This isn't about whether I can or can't come up with the answer now. I simply have to. The identity of the person who took this dramatic photographic print is, I assure you, something the defense can and will reveal. What? No, you can't possibly. But as you so boldly claim you can, please do enlighten us. Unfortunately, I'm unable to present a name. How utterly underwhelming. Did you really believe you could... However, I am able to present evidence. Which we'll do next time.